Hello, textbook brokers. This is Mr. Gupton's class of 2018 for the course BUAD 4980. The presenters present are, from left to right, Alex Baker, me, Fabian Torres, Brandon Wright, Ahmad, and Ehab Abrahim. We are happy to present this case in hopes of helping you find the answer to your on-campus integration. We are aware of the fact that Barnes & Noble currently runs the bookstore and on campus, and that MTSU earns a 30% revenue return. We are also aware that you wish to somehow gain a similar advantage to Barnes & Noble's central location without paying similar dividends. We're especially aware that this revenue expense would throttle the prices you have to set to maintain profitability, and it would lower the brand image and traffic for your company. We hope that with this video, we're able to give you some suggestions that not only bolster your efforts for increasing your apparel sales and help you find a central location, but we also hope to provide you with a solid backing to convince MTSU that you are their best bet for building their brand, satisfying their students' needs, and partnering with them to make a profit in an ethical, effective manner. Now I will turn it over to Brandon, who will give a brief intro on Text Brokers' legacy.
Of 20 years, Textbook Brokers has been servicing different communities and universities around the country. They currently have 100 plus locations located on and off campus. Right now, they're working on getting the cost of books down on a national basis. They understand that the cost of tuition is rising and want to supplement with cheaper books. Currently, they are working with different brands including Nike, Champion, Under Armour, and Columbia. We're going to talk about their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and what our recommendations would be for Textbook Brokers. We also have a compiled list of statistics from a survey that we took that will help implement these strategies.
Okay, so as we've analyzed Textbook Brokers as a whole, some of the strengths that we looked at are lowering their prices comparably to Phillips Bookstore, along with higher in-store traffic. There's a larger in-purchase when students are able to come and get their books comparably to Phillips Bookstore. They do offer 2 locations. They also have free shipping for returns. The buyback policy, also in place, does help benefit some students when returning books, and also their offering of apparel in their Lightning locker room. Some of the weaknesses are they are off campus. This is a weakness for Textbook Brokers because of the accessibility for students to access books or the apparel in the store. They only have 1 location that actually offers the apparel, so looking into that, into putting that into different markets and places throughout the campus would help with an advantage. We also looked at advertising of the Lightning locker room. That was something that wasn't as prominent in their marketing, and then also going into marketing, some of their coupons and marketing strategies have not been thorough with timing for students when looking into textbooks. Also, their selection of school supplies, comparably with Phillips Bookstore, they do not offer as much, and that seems to be something that most students tend to go to the Phillips Bookstore instead of choosing Textbook Brokers over them in order to get those school supplies such as binders, pencils, and other things that they would need for school.
We had a lot of opportunities, but we just focused on 4 opportunities that we thought they are the best for Textbook Broker. And the first one was the growing number of students in MTSU, as also the area of Murfreesboro, and that just increased the sales of Textbook Broker. And also we talked about the MTSU alumni, and we thought about Textbook Broker should focus on the apparel side of the alumni, since they are contributing a lot for the school. And also we thought like Textbook Broker should focus on sponsoring events and being a part of the alumni movement in the MTSU school. And Partnerships was a great opportunity for textbook broker to be a part of. For example, we thought like partnerships with the programs that school provide for, like such as Ignites or sport teams or the army, that will increase their sales
And make their profits soar.
the last opportunity we thought about as a group was the reward program and the internet in general. For example, they could just make an app and improve their sale from their app. Like people could buy their apparel or their books online instead of coming into the store, and also make the reward program for the student that goes to their store and purchases stuff frequently.
We also spoke about the threat. The first thing is Phillips Bookstore. The good things about Phillips Bookstore, they are center location. That's mean there's a greater accessibility for the students. Also, they are sponsored from MTSU. This means that certain books has to be purchased from bookstore. They also have more variety that cause greater traffic and higher sale. There is also technology shift towards online integration, which make textbook obsolete. If MTSU traffic lowers, also that textbook brokers revenue will lower. Another threat was miscommunication within the school system. A while back, student was told that they will have the option to include labs and ebooks with their tuition payments. This leads the student to believe that they will save money by doing this. But that was a false assumption. This actually will increase how much they will have to pay.
The next part of the video is recommendations. The first one on our list is an attractive financial offer. This being an attractive financial offer from textbook brokers to MTSU. While textbook brokers would love to have a central location in MTSU without having to pay MTSU any sort of money, we find that this is inconvenient and sort of too much to ask of MTSU. This is because MTSU still needs to make a profit to facilitate its programs and services. While the rewards of student satisfaction and increased in-store traffic seem amazing for textbook brokers, MTSU would end up with less out of the deal due to losing a revenue source. The next recommendation we had was a mobile store. This store would basically work out if Phillips Bookstore could not be taken over by textbook brokers. Not only would this mobile store be able to reach students all throughout campus, but it would provide similar services that textbook brokers' locations already have, such as apparel, books, rentals, clickers, and similar items that they might need throughout the week. We would also recommend school involvement, such as working with sports programs, working with certain alumni programs, or just working with certain clubs that are around MTSU in general. Not only could we give discounts based on merits or other such rewards for participating in programs such as Ignite, but we could also give discounts and ultimately raise our net income. The top recommendation, which involves all recommendations we've given so far, is obtaining a central location. This central location would benefit textbook brokers as it would increase accessibility to students who otherwise wouldn't be able to reach textbook brokers, such as those without vehicles, those who take buses from apartments, or those who simply take bikes. At a certain point, when there is not enough decrease in cost, students would rather just have easy access to a location where they can get all their needs. So between $5 or $2 between different renting costs, to certain people, the accessibility that the central location would give them is worth far more than the amount they would save in a few dollars and pennies differences. For the next part, we want to introduce statistic information. Before we do that, however, we want to explain how we got our information and how it was collected and averaged. We got our information by surveying MTSU students in the last 15 minutes of class. We put them into groups of 5 and asked them to average the results between them to come up with their answers. We also took time to ask questions about why they came up with certain results. The first 2 sections of the survey were basically comparisons between textbook brokers and the Phillips Bookstore. As you can see on the screen, we asked the same questions for both stores so that no one could claim that we skewed the answers, or we were biased in our findings. While we weren't biased in how we approached the survey, we were surprised at the outcomes. we expected to find less people had used the Phillips Bookstore, as by now students were well versed in where to find the best deals for books. Upon asking the respondents, one of them mentioned that he was on a sports scholarship and that even though he had his tuition and school supplies paid for, he was basically forced to get all of his supplies from the Phillips Bookstore. We figured that had something to do with the 30% revenue, meaning that if a student paid $1,000, the school would get back $300, which means in reality, the school only spends $700. We found that this didn't make much sense due to the fact that the average item at the textbook brokers, according to our survey, was only $45.25, while in the Phillips Bookstore, on average, the items were $84.17. While the real price on the Phillips Bookstore book would only be $58.92 for MTSU, due to the 30% cash back the school would receive from the Phillips Bookstore, this is still more money that they'd have to spend than if they shopped at textbook brokers instead. The second two sections of the survey were simply asking about apparel and ebooks. On the apparel section, we got very skewed results because we had half of the respondents who didn't own apparel and the other half who owned several items. The results of what they owned was equal hoodies, hats, sweatshirts, while t-shirts were the majority. When asked where they attained the apparel, the results were fairly equal across the board. No one has a majority yet. They got them from such places as alumni, hall, sport games, individual organizations, or they bought them at such places as textbook brokers or the mall. No one mentioned the Phillips Bookstore, however, which shows us that Phillips Bookstore does not get as much traffic for apparel than the other places do. I will talk about this ebook section in the next section of the video, where I compare the statistics that I found. The last part of the video is the textbook brokers versus Phillips Bookstore survey statistics. A while back, we gave a survey out to MTSU students and asked them basic questions such as how much they averagely paid per item and the total they paid on their visits. So as you can see here, textbook brokers on average per item was $45.25, while Phillips Bookstore was $84.17. This means that the Phillips Bookstore was 86% more expensive than textbook brokers. But on total end, as you can see here, and they spent a lot more in textbook brokers versus Phillips Bookstore, which is $225 versus $169.60. In Phillips Bookstore, they actually had 25% less revenue than textbook brokers. To continue this, we asked the students what percentage of their school supplies came from which store. So, as you can see here, textbook brokers had 72%, Phillips Bookstore only had 14%, and other was 12%. This means that on average, 5 times more people shop at textbook brokers than at the Phillips Bookstore. If the average markup of textbook brokers is about 30%, which is the market average overall, if Phillips Bookstore has 25% less revenue, that means that if MTSU switched over to textbook brokers, they would only be losing 5%. But, as you can see, textbook brokers also sold a lot more than Phillips Bookstore. And since 5 times more used than the Phillips Bookstore, they would easily make up this revenue loss with the net income that textbook brokers would supply. In the last part of the survey, we asked students about their experiences with labs and ebooks. We asked them how many of your classes had labs, and they said 32%. How satisfied were you with the lab? And that was a 1.6 out of 5. This means that MTSU students, when using these labs, they weren't really satisfied at all. But the biggest thing is the pertinence these labs had to the class, which is a 3.6 out of 5. That means that these labs had highly to do with the class. On average, there's a lot of quizzes that come with these labs. There's a lot of homework assignments that come with these labs. And even though they have a lot to do with the class, they didn't teach students what they needed in order to pass the class. And last but not least, we asked them, do you prefer textbooks or ebooks? 87.5% said textbooks and 12.5% said ebooks. This is where we have a problem. That means only 12.5% wanted ebooks, but 32% were forced to use them. In a society, especially in America, we should have the freedom to choose which platform we get our information from. Just by looking at the survey, you see that at least 20% of people are forced to use ebooks when they don't want to use them. In conclusion, we believe a central location would be very beneficial to textbook brokers. However, we also believe that an attractive financial offer is needed in order to get MTSU to make this deal with textbook brokers. We also believe apparel deals and partnerships would be very beneficial for apparel sales for textbook brokers, such as with individual organizations or school-sponsored events. And last but not least, we also believe that we need to make sure that teachers know that labs sometimes aren't as pertinent as they think they are. We thank you for watching this video, and we hope that we helped you somehow in getting your on-campus location.